The wind howled like a warning across the empty plains, carrying dust, secrets, and the kind of loneliness that settled deep in a person's bones. Clara Hayes clutched her swollen belly as she walked along the dirt road. Each step heavier than the last. Not just because she was 8 months pregnant, but because she had nowhere left to go. Her husband was gone, taken by fever just weeks ago, and the town that once promised kindness had turned its back on her when she needed it most. With no money, no shelter, and a child on the way, Clara had only one thing left, her stubborn will to survive. The sky darkened above her, and thunder rolled like distant gunfire. She needed shelter, fast. That's when she saw it, a broken-down ranch house sitting alone against the horizon. Its fence half collapsed, its barn leaning like it had given up long ago. It looked abandoned, but desperation pushed her forward. As she approached, she noticed something strange, smoke. Faint but real, curling from the chimney. Someone was there. Her heart pounded. She hesitated only for a moment before knocking on the door. No answer. She pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning like they were warning her to turn back. Inside, the air was cold and still, but not empty. The smell of sickness hung thick. And then she saw him, a man lying on the floor near the fireplace. Barely conscious, his skin pale. His breathing shallow. Beside him, 2 small children huddled together. Their eyes wide with fear and hunger. Clara froze. She had come here hoping to be saved, but instead, she had walked into someone else's tragedy. The older child, a boy no older than 7, stood protectively in front of his younger sister. "Don't hurt him," he said, his voice trembling but brave. Clara's heart broke in that moment. She knelt down slowly, raising her hands gently. "I won't," she whispered. "I'm here to help." The boy hesitated, then stepped aside. Clara moved quickly, her instincts taking over despite her exhaustion. The man was burning with fever. His pulse was weak. He was dying. She looked around the house, bare shelves. Empty cupboards, signs of struggle everywhere. Whoever this man was, he had been fighting a losing battle for a long time. Clara swallowed her fear. She could walk away. She could save herself and her unborn child. But as she looked at the 2 terrified children, she knew she wouldn't. She couldn't. "What's your name?" she asked the boy. "Eli," he said. "And that's my sister, Rose. That's our pa. He's a cowboy." Clara nodded, her eyes softening. "I'm Clara. And I'm going to help your pa." And just like that, her fate changed. The storm outside raged as Clara worked through the night. Using everything she could find, old herbs, water from the well, torn cloth for cooling his fever. She stayed awake, whispering softly to the children, giving them what little comfort she could. Hours passed. Then morning came. The man was still alive. Barely, but alive. Over the next few days, Clara became the heartbeat of that broken ranch. She cleaned, cooked what little she could find, cared for the children, and fought tirelessly to pull the dying cowboy back from the edge. She learned his name was Daniel Cross, a once strong, respected cowboy who had lost his wife the year before and had been slowly falling apart ever since. Sickness had taken what grief had left behind. And now, only Clara stood between him and death. But Clara had her own battle to fight. Each day, her body grew weaker. The strain of caring for 3 others while carrying a child was pushing her to the limit. Still, she refused to stop. Because somewhere along the way, this wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about hope. About second chances. And one quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel finally opened his eyes. His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "Why are you helping us?" Clara looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. "Because no one helped me," she said softly. "And I know what that feels like." He stared at her. Something shifting in his gaze, something deeper than gratitude. Something that would change everything. But Clara had no idea. This was only the beginning of a story far bigger than she ever imagined. The wind howled across the empty plains like a warning. No one was left to hear. Dust swirled in restless spirals. And the sky above hung heavy with dark, rolling clouds. In the middle of that endless wilderness walked a woman who had nothing left except the life growing inside her. Clara Hayes tightened her grip around her swollen belly as she forced herself to take another step. Her boots were worn thin, her dress covered in dust. And every breath felt heavier than the last. She was 8 months pregnant, alone. And dangerously close to collapsing, but stopping meant giving up. And giving up meant death. Just weeks earlier, she had a home. A husband. A future. But fever had taken him. And the town that once smiled at her had turned cold the moment she became a burden. Now, she was just another forgotten soul walking a road that led nowhere. Thunder cracked across the sky. Clara flinched, her heart pounding. Her legs trembled beneath her. And she paused for a moment, fighting the dizziness creeping into her vision. "I can't stop. Not now," she whispered to herself. Then she saw it. Far in the distance, barely visible through the dust and wind, a ranch. It looked broken. Half dead. Like it had been abandoned by hope itself. But then she noticed something that made her heart skip. Smoke. Thin. Faint. But real. Someone was there. Hope flickered inside her chest, fragile but alive. With the last of her strength, Clara began walking toward it. By the time she reached the ranch, the storm had grown fierce. The wooden fence was broken. The barn leaned dangerously to one side. And the house itself looked like it had been fighting against time, and losing. Clara climbed the porch steps slowly, her body screaming in protest. She knocked. No answer. She hesitated. Then pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing into the silence inside. Hello. She called softly. Nothing. But then. A sound. Weak. Strained. She stepped inside. And what she saw made her breath catch. A man lay on the floor near the fireplace, his body barely moving. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow, and sweat covered his face. He looked like a man already halfway gone. Beside him, two children huddled together in fear. The boy stood quickly, placing himself in front of his younger sister. Don't come closer, he said, his voice shaking, but brave. Clara froze, raising her hands gently. I'm not here to hurt anyone, she said softly. The girl clutched her brother's arm, her eyes wide with fear. Our pa is sick, the boy added, his voice breaking slightly. Clara looked at the man again. He wasn't just sick. He was dying. For a moment. Just a moment. Clara felt something cold pass through her thoughts. She could leave. She could turn around, walk away, and try to save herself and her baby. No one would blame her. But then she looked at the children. Hungry. Scared. Alone. Just like her. And in that moment, she made a choice. I'm going to help him, she said. That night, the storm raged like the world itself was falling apart. Inside the broken ranch, Clara worked tirelessly. She found old cloth and soaked it in water, placing it on the man's burning forehead. She searched the kitchen, barely anything left, but managed to boil water and prepare something small for the children. Eat slowly, she told them gently. The boy nodded. My name is Eli, he said quietly. And this is my sister, Rose. Clara smiled faintly. I'm Clara. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, but she didn't stop. Every few minutes, she checked the man's breathing. It was weak. Too weak. Stay with me, she whispered, though she didn't even know his name yet. Hours passed. Lightning flashed through the windows. Thunder shook the walls. And still, Clara stayed. Morning came slowly. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet, fragile stillness. Clara sat beside the man, her head resting against the wall, barely awake. Then. A movement. Her eyes snapped open. The man coughed weakly. Clara leaned forward quickly. You're going to be okay, she said softly. His eyes fluttered open, barely focusing. Why? He whispered. Clara didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was, she didn't fully know herself. Because someone has to, she finally said. Days turned into weeks. And somehow, against all odds, the man survived. His name was Daniel Cross. A cowboy who had once been strong, respected, and full of life. But after his wife died, everything changed. Grief broke him. And sickness nearly finished the job. Until Clara arrived. She became the heart of that dying ranch. She cleaned. Cooked. Cared for the children. And slowly, she brought life back into a place that had forgotten what life felt like. Eli started smiling again. Rose began laughing. And Daniel. He began watching Clara in a way he didn't fully understand. There was something about her. Strength, hidden inside softness. Pain, carried with quiet dignity. She had every reason to give up. But she didn't. And that changed something inside him. But Clara was still human. Still tired. Still carrying a child. And one morning, everything changed. She was at the well, pulling up a bucket of water, when suddenly, pain. Sharp. Sudden. Unforgiving. She gasped, dropping the bucket. Her hands went to her belly. Not now, she whispered. But it was time. Daniel heard the noise and rushed outside. Clara. He caught her just before she collapsed. Fear hit him harder than anything he had faced before. Because now, it was her life slipping away. The storm returned that night. Inside the ranch, the air was thick with tension. Clara cried out in pain, gripping the edge of the bed. Daniel stayed by her side, completely out of his depth, but refusing to leave. You're not alone, he kept saying. Over and over. You're not alone. Hours passed. Each one heavier than the last. Until finally. A cry. Small. Fragile. But powerful. A baby. Daniel froze. Clara collapsed back, exhausted, tears streaming down her face. It's a girl. He said softly, his voice filled with awe. Clara smiled weakly as she held her child. In that moment. Something shifted. Not just in the room. But in all of them. The days that followed were different. Lighter. Warmer. The ranch no longer felt broken. It felt alive. Daniel worked harder than ever. Fixing fences, repairing the barn. Rebuilding everything piece by piece. But what he was really rebuilding was himself. And Clara. She found something she thought she had lost forever. A family. Then one evening. Everything changed again. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and fire. Clara stood outside, holding her baby, watching the horizon. Daniel walked up beside her. Quiet. Thoughtful. I've been thinking, he said. Clara glanced at him. You saved us, he continued. Not just my life. But everything. She shook her head softly. We saved each other. Daniel took a breath. I don't want you to leave. Clara's heart skipped. I want you to stay, he said. Not because you need a place. But because this is your home now. He paused. Then said the words he had been holding back. I love you, Clara. Silence. The kind that changes everything. Clara felt tears rise in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't allowed herself to. But life had other plans. And for the first time in a long time. They didn't feel cruel. I never thought I'd feel this again, she whispered. Daniel stepped closer. Neither did I. She looked at him. At the children. At the life they had built together. And slowly. She smiled. Then maybe, the ranch stood strong again. Not perfect. But full. Of laughter. Of love. Of second chances. And Clara, the woman who arrived with nothing, became the reason everything lived again. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because the next story might stay with you forever.